Well, good afternoon, Kelly. How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for
Good.
asking. I just want to briefly remind you of informed consent. There were some reasons in the first meeting that I gave you that I would have to break confidentiality. I just want to give you a reminder of those and make sure you don't have any questions on any of those. Do you have any questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right, great. Well, let's go back. In our last session, we talked about the anxiety that you were having regarding your son, and then a different thing came in, and there's a possibility of him moving back into your home this summer. And that was taking your anxiety level to new levels, because you're saying that when he comes in the home, everything kind of gets, it's not so calm and peaceful. But at the end, we talked about you and your husband talking to your son, because he was going to come home for the weekend, and really expressing to him some of your concerns and your husband's concern, and see where he was at. And so I'm interested in how that turned out, if you were able to talk to him.
Yeah, I did get a chance to talk to him a little bit. Unfortunately, my husband wasn't home for most of the weekend, so it was just my son and I. But I did talk to him a little bit about it. He kind of eased my fear. But the thing that we can't change is that since he went to school, we now have a much smaller home. We downsized a year ago, believing he was never gonna live at home again, and he never intended to. It's just the matter of him wanting to move to New York City, it being so expensive that he thinks he may need to come home and save some money for a while. But he did tell me the longest it would be until January, that he would definitely be moving in January, because his friend was graduating and they were gonna find a place together. They didn't think he could afford it on his own, but so that made me feel better. And I also realized that, you know, when he last lived at home, both my kids were in high school, much younger. He's a senior now in college. So although our house is a lot smaller, everyone is a lot busier. I'm now a full-time student, which I wasn't at the time. My husband's very busy with his job. My son would be working. My daughter works full-time. So it's not like we would be on top of each other all the time. So the anxiety of that possibility has eased. I don't feel anxious about that anymore.
Okay. So your anxiety level with him coming home after is he graduating in May?
Yeah, he'll
Okay.
graduate in May.
In May. So your anxiety level with him coming home in May has decreased, because basically what I hear you saying is that you guys are just not home as much with the lifestyles. Your lifestyles have changed considerably in, I guess, the however many years he's been in college.
Exactly.
So you don't feel quite that you're gonna be on top of each other.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
How do you, in your conversation with him, what did you learn about not just his lifestyle, but how you both have changed in that 4 years from, you know, you're saying your anxiety level because how it used to be and what now. What's changed about you in that 4 years? Is it just because here you're going back to school?
Yeah. Well, that's probably the biggest change, because, you know, I started back at school when he left for college. So I was a full-time stay-at-home mom when he last lived at home.
Mm-hmm.
So my entire focus was my family, my children. They were everything. And now, you know, not that they're not everything to me anymore, but I have my own thing going on. I'm now a full-time student. So that's been the biggest change.
So it sounds like there's been a shift in your priorities then.
Right, I'm not so hyper-focused on the two of them and how they're relating to each other. They're adults now, so I do see definite improvements in how they relate to each other. And I assume that just comes from maturity.
Your maturity?
Their maturity.
Their maturity, okay. All right. So then, now that your priorities changed, and you realize that your kids have changed, they've grown up, how does that affect your anxiety level?
Honestly, after I talked with my son this weekend and thinking, about why was I anxious about it, all the reasons that I was having anxiety about it kind of disappeared. So I'm really not anxious about the fact that he may move home again at all anymore. Ask me again when it happens, I could increase, but, no, I've stopped worrying about something that may or may not happen in 7 or 8 months.
So the anxiety that you were having was pretty much predicated on the past.
Yeah.
And not necessarily on how things really are now.
Yeah, it was how I was picturing things could be in a few months, but using the people that were 5 years ago.
Okay.
And after examining it myself, realized those two just don't match anymore.
Right. Yeah, those pictures are not the same.
Right.
So we can't take the same brush that we were using before, we've got to use a different brush.
Exactly.
Have you ever heard of the saying that says, don't worry about tomorrow, today has enough worries for
Yeah.
today?
I don't know that I've exactly heard that, but it
Yeah.
certainly makes sense.
Sounds like it might apply then
Yes.
to that situation.
For sure.
Yeah. So not worrying about what hasn't happened yet, but staying right here in the present,
Right.
in today, what's going on, and evaluating it for today.
Exactly.
So it sounds like that you've kind of come to some of those conclusions then in really going back and looking at who your son really is, who you are, who your daughter, who your family is
Mhm.
different today.
Yes.
Okay, that's excellent. What I'm going to ask you to do then is, since it looks like this situation is kind of resolving itself, I want you to think about if there are any other areas in your life where you possibly have that tendency
Mhm.
to look at things from how they used to be or how maybe I want them to be. Okay? Because I want to see if perhaps this is, if there's a pattern there, or if this was just an isolated instances.
No, I would say there's definitely a pattern.
Okay, so I want you to go and I want you to write down what other areas that you see that you possibly are doing those same things.
Sure, I can
So
do
that we can go back and look at area by area, and then you can begin to use some of the same skills that you used in this situation in those situations.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Okay? All right, great. So this same day and time next week?
Perfect.
Great. And I look forward to digging in a little bit more to some other scenarios with you.
Okay, great.
See you
Thank you.
soon.